So we're going to do a review in contrast, and so we're going to start with the contrast slides. And you can see even from the example on the contrast slide cover, we have several examples of contrast already to take a look at. So we have this silhouette on this green background, very contrasting. We also have this image on top of white, also very contrasting. So they're obviously quite different. We also have black text against gray text. So we have a contrast in color in the text. We have contrast in size in the text. And we also have contrast in styles and fonts of the text. So this particular text has serifs, so extensions or feet, and its complementary font, its opposite font, is a sans serif, so no extensions or feet. And you can learn more about typography in the typography review video. Whenever we're working in contrast, we have to think that contrast should be very obvious. Things shouldn't look similar in appearance, it should look quite different. And so when we take a look at things here, like colors can create contrast in text, in images, the font styles and size of the font. Also, spot color in black and white photos is a great example. And we'll take a look at some of those in a minute. And differences in shapes and sizes as well. So if you have 3 squares on a page and a circle all grouped together, the circle is obviously going to stand out because it's different. So when we're looking at contrast in text, we have things like styles of a font. So if we took the font Times New Roman, we could use the bold Times New Roman versus the light or regular. We could take serif versus sans serif, as in the cover of our PowerPoint. We can use script versus a slab font. These combinations allow textiles to create visual contrast. So we're looking for obvious differences between the fonts in order to create that contrast. Size also is a huge component of contrast. So in order to create contrast and to help people navigate through your content, we will take things like headlines and we'll bold them, we'll make them bigger so it's an obvious piece of text that we can navigate through to find out what stories we want to read. So we don't have to read the whole story to find out what's going on. We can simply follow the headlines based on the visual communication. You told me these big headlines with fonts, large fonts, bold fonts, maybe even in color, are what I'm supposed to scan through the newspaper in order to see what I really want to read. You can also create contrast by using color. So adding color to a black and white photo, adding color to text will also help, as you can see right here on this page. You can see a visual difference between the two. So I know my focus needs to be put on the colored item. So graphics, charts, maps, there's all sorts of things that we can apply color to create visual interest in order to create contrast. Contrast and alignment, for example. So we'll take a look at a menu where if you have one thing, so you have all sorts of text on a page and everything's nicely lined up, but just that one element is out of alignment, well, that's where your focus goes. And you can do that on purpose. You can play with alignment in order to create unity, but you can also use alignment in order to create contrast. So when we have contrasting colors, if you take a look at the review of color theory, you'll also see there that you can use contrasting color. So opposites attract, like black and white, red and green, purple and yellow. So those color combinations are opposites each other on the 12-point color wheel. And if you take a look once again at the color theory review, you can take a look at what makes a good color contrast. So here's a great example of contrasting color. So we have this great standout yellow over this dark gray background. We also have this nice white type on a dark gray background. So it's a great contrast to the background, making it very easy to see and read. So here, these business cards, if you had a pile of business cards on a table, which ones would attract your attention? Probably these ones, The difference in contrast here on these particular cards is, well, they're a different shape. They've been treated differently than your average business card. So this is where you get a great contrast in shape and basically the material that's used to create this business card. We also have this lovely contrast here, red with this white type. You can see that this has also been printed with a texture. It's actually a clear gloss coat that's been printed in a texture to add more variety. Now, this is a much more expensive card to print. Then we move on to this nice, lovely card here. This is printed on a recycled paper, and it works really well. So remember the visual communication. The papers we choose will reflect what kind of business that we're in. This red salon looks very high class and expensive, and the card looks that way too based on how it's printed and the colors that are used. This vintage clothing company, on the other hand, is recycled material. We have old photographs, and it's so the visual component here and the choice of paper actually adds to the contrast between these types of cards. And is this affordable versus is this expensive? Now let's look at posters. So here they've used black, white, and red only. And we have great contrast here. And there's this white hand that's over top of the silhouette that creates this amazing contrast and taking this negative white space and turning it into a positive image. This is a great example of contrast and alignment. So we've got all these different alignments happening. One thing I want you to take note is proximity. How are these two words related? Outriders. They actually read together. The outriders are supposed to be read together. Just because they're separated by a lot of space, they've been treated exactly the same, in the same size and the same font, and nothing else has. So we relate these two together. They are a package. So the outriders. But the contrast here in the color and the design with the alignment has created a great contrast here. These are opposites attract, blue and orange. This is kind of a tough one to read though, this blue over this orange, but it's a very simple design, and the reason why I chose it was to show contrast with opposing colors or complementary colors. I love this brochure. Each page is treated as a different color. Sorry, well, we've used two different colors, and that's all that's been used here. And there's great contrast here, but we're also using the repetition principle. We have green type on white, white type on green, green type on white, white type on green. So we have this nice balance of color. We can also see that the alignment runs through directly the middle here on these three images. But this page adds a little bit more focus because of how the text is treated. Then we have contrast in menus. Well, how do I know which menu is which? So we have a specials menu, we have a deluxe menu, and we have a simple menu. We also have another menu with sashimi and soups. So each one of these menus they all look identical in fonts. They've used these black boxes, but what's the contrast? The contrast is the color of the background of each one of these cards, making it easier for waiters and waitresses or hostesses and hostess to grab the right menu based on the color theme. So that's a great contrast in color in order to identify which menu is which. And so that's a visual tool we can use when we need people to navigate through material and grab the right card, or in this case, a menu. Then we have this massive photo on this website, but the contrast is that we've got what's called reverse type, when you do white type over an image or a colored background. When you do this type of contrast, you have to make sure you have enough contrast so you can read the words. When there's too much contrast going on in the picture itself, it creates a distraction, making it difficult to read the text. And I chose this one because this is borderline. I'd like to see a little bit more contrast throughout these regions here. So it makes it very easy to read the text. And same here, this could have been treated a little more aggressively so that it made it easier to read. And that is our contrast review.